Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on Facebook, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1 on Facebook. And you can find us using the handle ETV Ghana. Join the conversation with your thoughts, your views and your comments even as we set the ball rolling tonight. Discussing issues to do with the freedoms granted media personalities who practice their trade as journalists or broadcasters. We'll premise our conversation on Chapter 12 of the 1992 Constitution and what it stipulates as to the freedoms and independence we ought to enjoy as media folks, and whether independence is being trampled upon or being gagged, or there is an attempt by the government to subtly introduce the criminal libel law, which was repealed under a government of the NPP under President J.A. Kufuor. Many are raising concerns about the rate at which media men are being harassed, the rate at which media men are being arrested, the rate at which media men are being prosecuted by the Ghana Police Service, and for that matter, the judiciary and the government. And so I read to you Chapter 12, and I will start with 162. It says, freedom and independence of the media are hereby guaranteed, subject to this Constitution and any other law not inconsistent with this Constitution. There shall be no censorship in Ghana. It reads more, there shall be no impediments to the establishment of private press or media, and in particular, there shall be no law requiring any person to obtain a license as a prerequisite to the establishment or operation of a newspaper, journal, or any other media for mass communication or information. Editors and publishers of newspapers and other institutions of the mass media shall not be subject to control or interferences by government, nor shall they be penalized or harassed for their editorial opinions and views or the content of their publications. All agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the principles, provisions, and objectives of this Constitution, and shall uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people of Ghana. Any medium for the dissemination of information to the public which publishes a statement about or against any person shall be obliged to publish a rejoinder, if any, from the person in respect of whom the publication was made. And so tonight, this would form the basis for our conversation, whether editors and publishers of newspapers and other institutions or the mass media are being interfered with in terms of their work by governance, whether there is an attempt to control them, especially those very much critical of government. Now, what forms the basis for this conversation? This week, or last week, there was the arrest of Mr. Kwabena Bobiansa. Now, what was the basis for the arrest? On the show, I believe, he had made an allegation to the effect that a parcel of land around the AU village area had been taken over by the First Lady and the Second Lady for their NGO, and so he made that allegation live on air. The police went in and arrested him. People have raised concerns about the arrest, the processes leading to the arrest, and whether a complainant had filed a case for the police to begin investigations into the matter. Apart from that, there's the case of the boss for ASEPA, who was also arrested, kept behind bars as well. There is the jailing of a young man who works with Radio XYZ for 14 days on a matter of contempt of the court, after he had also gone on social media and made some allegations to the effect that His Excellency the President was attempting to, have some conversations with some judges of the Supreme Court in the matter of the petition which had then been brought by the NDC's flag bearer on the 2020 elections. He is in jail 14 days. There's a popular one, which everybody is talking about, the Fix the Country convener, Mr. Vomawo, who is also in police grips at the moment as we speak. And his statement, many have condemned, but yet people are raising concerns about the mode of his arrest and how he's being handled, fact that he's not being allowed at the time he had been arrested to see his lawyers. These are fundamental human rights that are guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution, and yet many hold the view as being flagrantly abused by the police or the executive. Tonight, that forms the basis for our conversation to try and probe to understand the dynamics of the issue when it comes to journalism in this country and whether indeed we are under threat. But a question then is asked, of all the media folks in this country, why is it that only 3-4 folks have been arrested by the police? How about the number of other journalists who are also plying their trade? Why have they not been arrested if they were sticking to the professions of their job? We will discuss all these thoroughly on the show, and so I encourage you to stay with us as we probe further on this matter. My name is Samuel Shen, and once again, I welcome you to the show. We'll go for a short breather. When we come back, I'll introduce you to my guest, and then we'll start the conversation. Do stay with me.
The facts produced by the prosecution, they are saying that there had been a story done by him and 3 others, that the producers of the show, and it borders on the first lady and the second lady. Incidentally, on these 2 charges, these 2 individuals are not named as the complainants. So our question is it that the police just stood up and started investigating, or somebody came to them that they should investigate this matter? Who exactly came to the police to investigate this matter? We want to know. Is it the first lady? Because from the facts, if somebody lies about you or against your person, you are entitled to sue the person for defamation. And what is even more worrying with these charges is that I still remember the argument made by lawyer Nanado Dankwa Akufo-Addo in the Republic versus Tommy Thompson. The argument made by now president when he was then defense attorney. What is happening now? So as brothers, and thankfully all of you here are media men, it is always possible to get a story wrong. It is possible. And that is why there are civil remedies when you get a story wrong and that story injures their reputation. Are we to take it that the Ghana police is now becoming the tool for the first and second family, first lady, to remedy a reputation they claim has been injured? If we get to that point in our democracy, then we are going to destroy reputable institutions like Ghana Police. IGP Dampare, with the greatest respect to you.
And that's lawyer Godwin Eduji Tamaklo expressing his dissatisfaction with how the Ghana Police is being utilized in the matter of Kwabena Bobi Ansah. But the police has also been speaking, and this is what they say. They seek to give assurance to Ghanaians that they are not a tool in the hands of any politician. And they say, we are not putting fear into journalists. We want them to be responsible. That's according to the Ghana Police. And let me just read excerpts of what they wrote. They said that the police have said it is not putting fear into journalists and preventing them from doing their work following the recent arrest of some journalists in the country. The director of Public Affairs of the Ghana Police Service, ACP Kwesi Ofori, said the police is only seeking to ensure responsible journalism in the country. Now, he goes on to say, let me read that for you, the police is not doing anything to put fear into the media or prevent the media in its operations. All that we are saying is that the journalists must be responsible, should make sure that things they put out there are in line with good practices, he told Accra-based network in Accra. And so, on that note, I will quickly invite my guest for us to begin the conversation. And my brother, Kweku Kobe Asante, is here with me, Program Officer for the Media Foundation for West Africa. And Mr. Richard Kumado would also join us. He's a security expert to share his thoughts with us on this matter. Kweku, good evening.
Good evening, Sammy.
Abijaba. Have we met this year? No, we haven't.
No.
We haven't. Yeah. But how was the Christmas and the New Year?
Well, it's been great. We were enjoying the festivities and the New Year, and then this rude awakening. the train of abuses against journalists, you know, has set us to sit on the edge and to start talking, to start, you know, advocating and ensuring that, you know, there will be calm and the state, you know, will take actions that will inspire the media landscape, you know, to freely practice the trade.
Would you thus say that we started on the right footing when it comes to the practice of journalism in this country?
With what, from even the beginning of...
Yes, from the beginning of the year, as we started
the
year, would you say we started on the right footing as media practitioners?
I think that there has not been any extraordinary incident at the beginning of the year. It has always been like it has. Journalists going about their work, introspection into the previous years, what is coming up, and all that. And so it was almost like a normal, you know, train for us, even though we have already hinted that in recent years, from 2019, from 2020, 2021, we were seeing incremental rise in the abuses against journalists. We were hoping that things could be a bit calm this year, and then this train of attacks against journalists has started coming in. So it was smooth right from the beginning until now.
Why do you describe it as attacks on journalism?
I think that, like you called out, see, within a space of about a week or two, you see a number of incidents, and you forgot to add the one of the Connect FM journalist in Takoradi, Eric Nana Gentua, who was also attacked, brutalized by security people. That yesterday we had the information that he risked losing, you know, hearing from with one of the ears. Of course, and you've given the background already. Ohini Benia Boama now in jail. The Accra FM journalist that you mentioned, Bobby and Science issue ongoing. And then, whether you like it or not, Mr. Voma was issue, even though he's not a journalist, it is also in line with what we do at Media Foundation for West Africa: free speech, freedom of expression, and so, you know, giving the back-to-back incidents that is happening is the reason I call it a series of attacks, and giving the background to the issues that we have witnessed over the period, it is becoming extremely worrying. We say it is an incremental rise, you know, in intimidation, repression, oppressiveness by a government that is increasingly becoming despotic rather than being democratic.
So, I mean, why would you describe an utterance of a journalist, unsubstantiated, action is taken, as an attack? So, for instance, Mr. Benny makes the statement to the effect that some elements within government, His Excellency the President for that matter, have made attempts to see some judges in the matter of the election petition. And so he has that information. The onus lies on him to provide that information, and even the declaration of a source, if it becomes that important. The AU parcel of land matter, is there not a responsibility on the part of journalists that if I hear that they say you were a thief and that you've stolen a phone, I owe it to you to firstly call you, that I've heard this story about you, and therefore I would want to hear your side of the story before I go to press for that story. Is that not what the ethics demand? Exactly
so, and we have also sought to point out that part of the issue. I think that the issue has a lot of dimensions that must be addressed, and I risk, you know, moving ahead of myself. In fact, there's even the aspect of the regulatory institutions having to do their work. As you read from chapter 12 of the Constitution, there's a part that relates to the National Media Commission ensuring professional standards or ethical standards in the media. That is an aside on the issue. Then there's the aspect of responsible journalism, or what we say negligence on the part of the journalists that we are dealing with. So, for instance, from 2020 to 2021, this is from June 2020 to May 2021, the Media Foundation for West Africa had a program called the Ethics Monitoring Project. We monitored about 26 media outlets in Ghana and decided to say, what are the principles, ethical principles, and how are these media houses ensuring compliance with them? And the findings were mind-boggling. Again, so we make the point that you see an increasingly irresponsible or negligent media that is happening. But the response from government is totally uncalled for. It's almost like killing a fly with a sledgehammer, right? It's high-handed and repressive and intimidation on that ground. I mean, across global standards, in fact, handing over a jail term, a custodial sentence to a journalist or for press freedom breaches or for free speech issues is actually outlawed in many countries across the world. Global standards now, at best, you give them a fine, you give them some other forms of work to do, or you warn them, or stuff like that. But custodial sentence is out of the way.
Is that not the creeping trend in journalism today, where people make allegations, people, undermine people's hard-earned reputations, built reputations, and then because it's social media, because it's mainstream media, they say it and they go scot-free, and we are all looking on and watching for this trend to gain, grounds.
Exactly so, and I think that there can be other ways to dealing with it. All right, as you heard the lawyer for Bobi Ansa call out, there should be a civilized way of going about it, and that is why, for instance, you are considering the theme as criminal libel coming up again, because indeed, if you want to approach this matter from the angle of criminality, then you are going overboard, or you are going to the extreme. I must say on record that indeed we owe ourselves as journalists the honor and the responsibility of being extremely professional and ethical, given the privileges that are assigned to us, right? But it doesn't call for what we are seeing now. And there are other means that you can seek redress. You can go in for defamation. Journalists can be fined. I have seen media houses being given hefty amounts to pay, and it means that they will be put in check, or perhaps they will even go out of production.
But do you think that is deterrent enough? Look, I don't know whether you have time to watch social media.
Yes.
And to see the individual broadcasts that people do on social media, and the kind of language they use, the kind of allegations they make about personalities in this country, be it pastors, be it politicians, be it whoever. They say damning things about people and they go scot-free.
I think that it's also a matter of impact and the effect it creates. What do you want? A landscape where people are afraid to speak so that you will be on your show because you made a mistake and genuinely made a mistake. I mean, it is very difficult to differentiate what is misinformation and what is disinformation. Disinformation means that you are intentionally doing it. At what point will I be certain that Samuel Eshon intentionally shared this false information, right? It will be very difficult to tell. What do we want? A landscape where people are afraid to speak because they know that when they get it wrong, they are going to be in jail. Or a landscape where people are encouraged to speak, but they know, if they know that there can be some form of penalty to them, that is deterrent enough in the name of defamation and all that comes with it. I think that if we choose the other one of shutting people down, handing over custodial sentences, using the state power and influence, exerting so much intimidation and repression on them, then we will roll back the gains that we have chalked over the years, and we go to the era of where people were shut up, quiet and silent, which is what the 1992 Constitution of Ghana attempted or sought to cure by ensuring that people should not be attacked, be fined, be jailed by their journalistic works, which you rightly read at the beginning of the show. I think that we should embody that. We should see that in the spirit of a democratic society. If we can't speak, if we can't share our thoughts, and in the process make mistakes in them, but rather coiling for the fear of being handed custodial sentences and all that, we risk rolling back the gains.
Are we not blowing this out of proportion? For instance, let me just use guesswork. If, let's say, there are 130 radio stations in Accra, let's say there are about the print media, let's say there are about 50 print media operators in Ghana today. In Accra alone, 130 radio stations, and of the 130 radio stations, just about 3 or 2 of these broadcasters, I think we left out Captain Smart.
That's right.
Smart is also in there.
That's right.
Smart is also in there. So let's say of over 130, radio stations and TV stations, about 3 of them who have made certain utterances find themselves on the wrong side of the law. And then the 127 are still operating, observing the ethics of the profession. How then do we say that criminal libel is creeping in when, of a population of 130, just about 3 or 4 of them?
I think that it is not a matter of statistics, right? It's a matter of the qualitative feeling that such experiences create in a society. Even if we have 5,000 journalists in Ghana and 1 or 2 or 3 or say 5 of them out of 5,000, if you do the ratio, this is very negligible, that these 5 are beaten, are hurt, their family members, are being chased, they are being thrown to jail. The feeling that creates among that 5,000 people can be extremely damaging, right? And so it is not so much about quantitative or statistical issues, but about how people feel to go about the work. It is only journalists or largely journalists that deal with information that serve a general purpose. The Constitution understands the role that the media plays in a democratic society. If we create a certain feeling where there's fear, there's intimidation, people are not confident enough to hold government accountable, then we are losing it
It's interesting we keep using the word journalists, and we don't ask ourselves, do these individuals who find themselves in this space wearing the cloak of journalists qualified to be called journalists in the first place, as to whether they have the professional training, whether they have an understanding and appreciation of the ethics of the profession they're engaged in?
I think that perhaps maybe I use journalists loosely as a catchphrase for almost anybody in the industry as media players, because there have been accounts that cameramen are attacked. There's a cameraman with TV3 who went for a protest with a journalist whilst he was filming. A soldier approaches him and starts beating him. He is not a journalist, but he's a media worker. I think that I'm using the word loosely. But I think that the process of making news or processing news out there is not only about the broadcaster, the presenter or the show host. A lot of people fall in there who must do their work for the work to for the news productions to happen. If any of them begin to feel that their lives are under threat, if any of them begin to feel that they are unable to do the work well because if they say it in this way or that way, the next moment a certain state authority arbitrarily will come after them for doing their work, then we risk, stifling the media or holding the media down.
If you just join us, we welcome you to Fact Sheet Live on ETV, live on Nisim 95.9 and 100.1. We are thrilled that you have joined us. You can share your thoughts, your views, and your comments with us. Our WhatsApp line is 02022222054. We would like to hear from you. You can also go to Facebook and look for our handle, ETV Ghana, and share your thoughts with us. We are joined on the line by Mr. Kumado. We'll pick his thoughts from the security point of view, but I'll come back to you, and I will try to address the issue of the sledgehammer approach that the Ghana Police Service has been using, and whether legally that's the path we should be going, and the concerns that people are raising, especially in the case of that of Mr. Vomawo and then that of Kwabena will be answered. But let me establish contact with Mr. Kumado and pick his thoughts on the conversation we are having tonight. Mr. Kumado, if you can hear me, good evening.
Good evening, Sammy.
I hope you're doing well today, sir.
Yes, I am.
All right. So I know you've been following the conversation, and you have your own thoughts on the matter of whether, you know, the criminal libel law is creeping in silently. What's your take? What's your position on this matter?
No, number one, I think I have to commend my brother in the studio. He has made me proud this evening. He has spoken the mind of many unborn babies, and I think he has spoken precisely well. Number two, it's important to take personal responsibility for our action, which includes the things we say publicly, and that also includes social media activity. Then number three, I think as a nation, we are being a little bit emotional, which is making us reactionary instead of being proactive and deal with issues as they come. We relate with one another irrespective of our profession, and the connectivity is what binds us together, particularly when it comes to the work of journalists or people who work within the media space, law enforcement, and governance. We call it security governance and political governance. They are intertwined or they are intermarried, and you have the media in the middle that cements the bond. We must be careful or be mindful of the way we go, because sometimes you can be doing the right thing wrongly. And I think in recent days, we have jammed up the public space a little bit with too much of unnecessarily stuff we can carefully and professionally handle behind closed doors.
Let me begin with you with a statement that is coming from the Ghana Police Service with the intent of reassuring Ghanaians that it's not as if they are going after journalists unduly, but they are only ensuring that they practice responsible journalism. Let me read a quote for you. It says, the police is not doing anything to put fear into the media or prevent the media in its operations. All that we are saying is that the journalist must be responsible, should make sure that things put out are in line with good practices. And this is coming from the head of directions of the Ghana Police Service. Would this suffice in terms of the protection of the rights of the journalists by the Ghana Police Service?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm saying that is this, you know, position by the Ghana Police Service reassuring enough for you as a security aspect that all they seek to do is for us journalists to practice our trade responsibly?
No, definitely I agree with the line, and it's important this statement is coming from the police. They need the public assurance. They need to win back the trust of the general public, and they need to be seen as people who are doing their job professionally, devoid of bias and prejudice. So the timing of the statement is important. What is left is for we to watch the space to ensure that it is being conformed or we have gained some level of compliance. Then people can take their work seriously. Other than that, it's in the right direction. Then again, the engagement between law enforcement and the journalists will need to be a little bit more proactive and progressive. And once we begin to engage ourselves productively in the public space, it helps us to iron out some of the excesses that come. My brother made a point about making a mistake. We all make mistakes. Law enforcement officers make mistakes, doctors make mistakes, journalists make mistakes. What is important is that we should be good enough and comfortable to take personal responsibilities for our mistakes, so that when we err, we can say that instead of being subjective, we have been definite when the profiles are not presented well. Particularly journalists and the likes of them who comment on national issues and global issues. There's that temptation which is a slippery road. And it would be unfortunate, you know, a strong hammer or a strong hand will come and fetch you with regard to what you have said wrongly, which you have accepted responsibility for, instead of being corrected. Then, when you want to achieve behavioral change, I think you should be more persuasive instead of being more aggressive, because that really creates different responsibility for people, and it doesn't order well for anybody.
Now, the approach being used by the police, which you describe as the aggressive approach, is it not the case that maybe over the period, journalists have taken the police for granted, and so, like we usually say in our local parlance,
sometimes when emotions flare up, It leads to so many things. You react instead of responding. And when you are not careful and politics comes in, you know politics is a bit divisive and unproductive, and it can be biased sometimes, tribalistic and nepotism. That is the area we want to run away from, so that we might be acting with our heads on, with high levels of circumspection and prudence, so that we can gain security compliance. And I have always been saying that it is better to be persuasive than to be aggressive if behavioral change is the objective. Having said that, we live in the same space, and there are going to be issues, whether today or tomorrow. What is important is that people are watching, and we are setting up precedents for tomorrow. We will need to tread cautiously and be prudent at what we do, whether we are journalists, whether we are commenting on national issues, or whether we are acting in the capacity as law enforcement officers. And in that way, we may be creating a homogeneous society where we have the capacity to deal with issues, resolve issues professionally and productively without cracking the whip.
Sir, my final question before we go for a break is to ask, is the criminal libel law back through the back door?
And that is a perception, and in law enforcement, perception matters a lot. One of the things we also don't do properly in this country is public information management and public education. We don't do it. So as a result of that, once a vacuum is created, people feed in with all manner of stuff based on misconception, mismessaging, miscommunication, and perception. To the large populace, like my brother said, we are not looking at the total number of people who have been picked within the shortest time, but the qualitative impact it's having in the media space. People have the view that even though the criminal libel law has been taken out officially, unofficially is being brought back into the system. No matter what it is and how you look at it, I think we should be civil a little bit. We should be more circumspect. We should be more prudent. And we should be more careful and act wisely, particularly as journalists, where we need to inform and communicate as precisely as possible. Then as law enforcement officers who have to be objective and professional at what we do. You see, the word professionalism is both conduct and action. That is why you hear they say the media acted professionally, or they conduct themselves professionally. And the two words is what is required for us, whether as journalists or as people in the media space or as police officers or law enforcement officers. I think let who has prevailed. People who are wrong must accept their responsibility and know that there are ramifications for bad behavior. And the law will come after you. By applying the law, let us not be selective, or let us not go so much hard where it will crack the head and the brain will be out there. We need the brain as well. And so it's like blowing hot and cold at the same time. I'm just encouraging my big brothers in the law enforcement agency to do their work firmly and professionally. And my brothers in the media to also be circumspect and be prudent, so we will not be having this crash that is creating problem for us.
It's interesting, the very, very thin line we are walking tonight, you know, contrasting position in terms of the views we have of the Ghana Police Service. At some point, we're hailing the Ghana Police Service with the new IGP and showing discipline and showing proactiveness, and we suddenly make the U-turn because some 2-3 journalists have been picked up by Ghana Police Service. The same Ghana Police Service we have been hailing because the IGP is firm, the IGP is principled, and he's discharging his responsibilities according to the law. Would such a person overlook or sit and look for these things we classify as the backdoor introduction to the criminal libel law?
No, you see, we are having a peculiar situation in the midst of all this hula-baloo going on. Some of the arrests were not done by the police. And I raised an issue, if somebody is setting an agenda to peg the police or to instigate the general public against the police, is the IGP aware of many of these arrests? Are the men of the IGP arresting these people? And if there are other security agencies doing the arrest, are they responsible for any crashes? And are they the ones going to prefer the charges against these people? particular case is Captain Smart case, and you saw the narration and you heard what he was saying. Then there was Brobe issue where he was having those interaction with the police. At what point was it picked up? What were the charges? Is it criminal or is it civil? So that's the confusion. I didn't want to go there. From reliable sources from people who are part of these things, it is proving that the police have little to do with many of these arrests. And my fear is that it should not be that somebody is trying to sabotage the work of the IGP by creating a arresting problem for him when he must take responsibility for things he has not done. Because, Sean, you see, in security management, there's something we call command and control. Command and control goes with one, responsibility, and number two, accountability, and number three, communication. These are the things. And on what basis were these guys arrested? Or were they just arrested and dumped in police station where the police do not even know why they are there, and now they must come back and find charges against them and begin to take personality and responsibility? That is an issue we need to look at, and it's not personal to me because I still believe that Namparade is doing a good job. And where they have done well, we encourage them. And where they are effective, we bring their attention to it. Because you realize that he just interdicted some of these guys in the north. Because he said they operated under him, and he has jurisdiction over them. There was a case at National Security where the guy was sent back to the military because the National Security said they don't have authority over him. We will need to look at the security management space again and look at it carefully. Other than that, people might be using the name of the police in doing some other things for which the police might be responding to. And that is what is happening today, and it's creating many disconnected issues and, you know, a little bit of contradictions here and there, which is not too well for the police.
Mr. Kumado, I'll thank you for joining me tonight. We'll go for a short break.
Thank you. God bless you.
When we come back, I'll continue the conversation in the studio to ask to do with issues to do with supervisory role of certain institutions, the National Media Commission, there's GIBA, there's the GJA, there are several of them. Why are they looking on for this to happen? We'll be right back. And you'll come back to Fact Sheets on ETV. We have about 10 minutes to run up our discussion tonight. And I'm here, Kwaku Kobe Asante, from the Media Foundation for West Africa. So I was asking a question to Mr. Kumado, and I'll ask him to you before we come to the supervisory agencies or institutions that are supposed to watch over all these things. Would the statement from the police that they are only doing all of these things to ensure responsible journalism on the part of practitioners, would that suffice for you?
Is it the place of the police to ensure responsible journalism? And who set them up to do that? Where in the police's job description is stated that ensure responsible journalism? They are supposed to ensure law and order, and I'm not sure you can stretch it too much to say specifically ensuring responsible journalism. It's host. It's empty, right? Let's not take that into account. I mean, it is not the place of the police to be doing that. I think that they are now doing those arrests arbitrarily, and it becomes dangerous. I see that just today, people were tagging them on social media, calling that another political element in the NPP has made a claim suggesting that the former president is working with Al-Qaeda to come and bring coup in the country, and then they have run to also invite the person, you know, trying to say, you see, we are on a very dangerous grounds. If the police is therefore begin to do this in the name of ensuring responsible journalism, then the slightest thing they hear on radio, on TV, people tag them, then they are beginning to invite them. That is the fear I'm talking about. Imagine the multiplier effect or the rippling effect of certain action. You say the slightest thing, police is coming for it. It is not the place of the police to do that. But then let me also try and speak to the main theme for the discussion. Is the criminal libel law sneaking back from the back door like you asked him? And I think that I would say the criminal libel law was repealed in 2001. But criminalizing free speech was never repealed. And this is what we have been saying all over, again and again over the years, right? Section 208 of the Criminal Code 1960 essentially criminalizes false information, right? Article 175, and I have to confirm, so that Article 175 of the Article 76 of the Electronic Communications Act 2008, Act 775, also criminalizes sharing false information. For that, it even creates a fine of 36,000 Ghana cedis or an imprisonment up to 5 years. So if I'm to answer the question, really, criminal libel law in its name and title was repealed in 2001. But the criminalization of free speech, of sharing false information has always been with us. I hear a lot of the political elements trying to pick on it. They all have the opportunity to ensure that these are expunged from our law books. As it sits there, it's always a risk for any government that want to be oppressive, that want to intimidate people, to always pick it, dust it, and throw it up out there and use it as a weapon to whip anybody in line and create what we are in now.
If you say the police have no business interfering in the work of journalists and seeking to bring out responsible journalism, then it tells me there's a responsibility on somebody to ensure that there's sanity when it comes to the practice. So
exactly.
Why is the National Media Commission then not being called upon to perform its duty?
Sammy, I can't speak for the National Media Commission. Again, it will begin to appear as if we are on a certain attacking spree against them. I see my executive director again and again touching on. But you know, we are on the ground monitoring media ethics, monitoring the use of indecent language, and we see the extent of which a lot of media houses are creating havoc. Right? We recorded some 2,710 violations, ethical violations in a year. 83.4% of those violations were shared among Power FM, Oman FM, and Accra FM. 3 stations took over 83.4% of the violations that were recorded. It means that we know where the problem is coming from. The problem is coming from some of the politically aligned media outlets. This therefore also brings in the role of the other regulatory body, the National Communication Authority. They have the responsibility of assigning frequencies to owners to people to operate. Over the time, we have shouted our voices hoarse because the process of even allocating frequencies is extremely opaque and not transparent, and it is politically induced. And so you get a lot of the politicians owning the space, what we call political capture. In 2018, 2017, we did a study sampling a number of media outlets and the conglomerate that we know in Ghana. And we realized that 1/3 of the media outlets are owned by the politicians. Now they say who pays the piper calls the tune. It is the chaos we find ourselves in here. And so there's so much to do about the regulatory bodies. I can't speak for National Media Commission why they can't do that, but we need to call on them. We need to hold them accountable because they are being paid to do that. What have they done? What work have they done over the years to ensure that there is some form of ethical and professional standards in the media? They should be able to also account to us. After all, it is the role of the media as enshrined in the Constitution to ensure accountability on public office holders. These are the people who are supposed to be our regulatory body. How accountable are they themselves to the tasks that are assigned to them? And this is the chaos we find ourselves in.
There was a thought which jumped at me at the time I was speaking to Mr. Kumado when he made a case that it's beginning to look as if the people who effect the arrest of these individuals are not necessarily the Ghana Police Service, but rather the Ghana Police Service are the ones who come to speak in the end that they effected the arrest. So if we have a situation where other maybe security agencies or military agencies are effecting arrests, maybe national security, maybe any of the other agencies or whichever it might be, are the ones effecting arrest of journalists or individuals, should we not be concerned?
I think that for us as press freedom advocates, we get a bit jittery when we have to talk about arrests, detention, you know, seizure of properties of journalists, distraction of them, and its related issues, because we know what it has done to the media landscape elsewhere. and it won't take so much for it to happen in our country. I think that it is the reason perhaps the National Media Commission doesn't even have the power to necessarily punish or ensure any penalize, because from the history of Ghana with media over the years, we know what the political elements have done to media and the extent they can go. I think that it is rather we being extremely proactive. We monitor religiously the landscapes, begin to spot them, and again whip these people in line, call them out, ensure that they do the right thing, and perhaps forestall some of these. We have gotten to a space where some of our colleagues who are in the media fraternity feel that nobody can do anything to them, nobody can hold them to account, and so freely they go on these platforms and say anything, of course held by the owner who's also politically aligned, and so whose ideology these journalists is pursuing, and then they go out there doing the same the thing freely. I'm not saying we should arrest anybody, but if we can come together and find ways that we can hold these people accountable, keep them in line, even right from the scratch, who do we give authority to go and operate a media? How well can these people explain to us the professional standards that they are going to ensure? Who are the people they are going to put in there? What is their qualification? Or how well do we trust that they are going to handle the space well? Those are conversations that we need to have to ensure that we keep our media landscape very sane, responsible, as a very sane and responsible space for us all.
Koko, thank you for making time to join us tonight on Fact Sheet. I'm hoping we'll have time to have an exhaustive conversation about journalism in the country, not necessarily linked to the arbitrary arrests by the security agencies, but the practice of the profession itself. But I'm hoping one of these nights we may have that opportunity and have an exhaustive conversation on that.
Hopefully.
But I'm grateful. So tonight I was joined on the phone by Mr. Richard Kumado, who is a security expert, and my brother Kuku Kobe Asante, program officer for the Media Foundation for West Africa, joined me tonight to discuss the issue about the concerns people are raising about the silent, quiet, slow but sure introduction of the criminal libel law. I hope we made sense to you tonight. I wish you a good evening. Girl Vibes is up next, but there'll be a repeat broadcast of the show, God willing, tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I encourage you to make a date with me, Fatih Shaibu Ali and Raymond Yamado on the Happy Morning Show at exactly 5:30 a.m. Good night.